Welcome, everyone. I'm Alfred Lambremont Weber, and indeed, it is a great pleasure and a privilege to be here with Venus contactee, and in this first part one of a special series on the Venusian, the statements of the Venusian hierarchy of light, Robert Potter. Welcome, Robert.
Alfred, as always, it's a pleasure to be here with you. You're one of the few people who grasp the importance of the information that I'm sharing and recognize that I am having a real face-to-face contacts with the Venusians, and that my story is absolutely true and real. So I appreciate sharing the information with you. I've been a lifetime contactee for 48 years, face-to-face meeting with Pleiades Venusians. So thank you for having me on here. This is probably one of the more, it's a very important message that we're going to be sharing here. And you have the links up there to my website, and I think maybe I'll give you another one that shares the actual message, but I'm posting a lot of amazing information from them, and we can delve into that, everything Venusian, Omnek, Dr. Frank Strange's, or whatever you'd like to go.
Oh, sure. You know, one of the first areas that I'd like to touch on, which you mentioned in depth in various aspects, is the Venusian connection to Jesus. And that is so deep. Now, before we do that, I want to take about 4 minutes, as you mentioned. If you could just take a few minutes to describe your connection to Dr. Frank Strange's and a bit about him, because we have some individuals who are trying to say that he's a Mason and therefore a Luciferian and a Satanist, and that does not square at all with the connections of Dr. Frank Strange's to Valiant Thor, to yourself, to Jesus, to Mary, to the whole thing. And I'd like to have your direct words, and then so that we can go forward, because there is so much trollism out there on planet Earth at this moment. Thank you for your patience on this issue. My pleasure.
And I'm going to share, I met or saw Dr. Frank Strange's and heard him speak several times in the early 80s. One of my close friends, Gabriel Green, was a close friend of him. And I had read A Stranger at the Pentagon early on, probably in the late 70s even. So he was always kind of a mythical figure and a interesting part of my process of growth. We became friends when I joined his Inner Circle meeting in 2004 or 2005. I had been called to join him and guided to connect with him. So I'll tell you a little about his history. So he grew up in Brooklyn, and this is all going to come out in Dr. Keller's book that I'm writing an introduction and a chapter actually about my personal association with Dr. Frank Strange's. But Dr. Frank Strange's is absolutely not a Satanist. He was kind of more of a Bible thumper, actually, very religious. His father had a lame leg, and he went to a Baptist meeting near his home in Brooklyn, and they prayed over his father, and his father's leg that was withered became whole in the name of Jesus. So the laying on of hands and true faith was firmly established in this young man's heart. And he went to seminary school. He asked so many questions. He said the pastors cried when he left. He said, the pastors are crying. They're sad you leave. He said, no, Father. He said, they're crying because I am leaving. He asked so many questions. He made a living hell. When he was reading some scripture, and it said, and then a bun danced on the table. And he was like, a bun danced on the table? I mean, so he went and researched it, and he went and found the actual historical thing. It says, it was abundance danced on the table. So he was a questioner. And of course, from his meeting of Valiant Thor did not mollify him in any way, shape, or form, but went to tune him into the message. But Valiant Thor, when he first met him, you know, he said, what do you, he goes, where are you from? He goes, I come from the planet, as a learning store, Venus. Another question that came early on in Dr. Frank's life, because he was a pastor. He was speaking at a seminary actually the day before that meeting with him and he was up there and talking, and he was signing a book called Saucerama. He was a Secret Service agent, so working on the paper hanger. So he had access to the corridors of power there, and used to go in the Pentagon, and he would pound on the table of, I think, General Ramey or something. And what's the story of these Valiant Thor character, the UFOs? And he goes, Dr. Frank, go back to preaching hellfire and brimstone. Leave the space people to us, right? So he was a very enthusiastic preacher, and so in this meeting he says, because what do you think about Jesus? And he said Valiant Thor said yes. He spoke about Christ and that he was born of a virgin, which is probably maybe it was Alon even who maybe used a technique to extract Jesus and his twin brother Thomas from the womb of Mary. Now, so those details I haven't received. That was stated in the as the words of Valiant Thor. Dr. Frank was very honest. His level of contact was far beyond that of mortal men, kind of like a Superman. He was chosen as a representative, and he went on board the craft repeatedly. He went on twice a year for 3 days. He would go on board and he would look at the Akashic records in the history coin, where he often talked about, some shepherds appearing at the life of Jesus, and of course the three magi. And he also talked about looking at Moses and the burning bush as some of his favorite things, that he would go back into the history coins or the Akashic records to learn about Christ and various things. And of course, he had a tremendous amount of secrets, because he was being shown in holographic images the what's going on the earth. The earth would come up in the globe, and they'd zoom in and they'd show different political situations and converse with the other representatives from the earth. Dr. Lee Nakamura, a guy named from Switzerland named Arthur Kleinschmidt, and there's one other I know that's in California. He's more local and relevant, so I'm not going to mention his name. But these are people that go on board and work with the Venusians and lend their ideas and information. Not all were public like Dr. Frank, but he enjoyed a lot of contact. The very first time he went on board was when Bobby Kennedy was killed. He had already been speaking, obviously, with Valiant Thor since 1957, and Valiant Thor, I think the next time he appeared in his car, and he just materialized in his car, and he just goes, what the? He was really scared. He goes, please just call me and show up. You gave me a heart attack. So he was enjoying conversations with Valiant Thor. And Bobby Kennedy came to his house once. He drove down, he got a knock on the door, and Bobby Kennedy was there. And he opened the door, and there was Bobby Kennedy. Was a little shorter, I think. And he looked out behind him, and there were police and the presidential candidate entourage. And, probably you can imagine the neighbor picking up the, watering the lawn, another lady in curlers grabbing the newspaper, another guy, who knows what was happening there, but caused quite a stir in his neighborhood. And Valiant Thor goes, Dr. Strange? Dr. Strange was the comic book character, so he got that mixed up, I guess. I don't even know if Dr. Strange was out in 1968, but he goes, no, Dr. Strange is. He goes, what about this Valiant Thor? I want to talk to Valiant Thor. I think you know Valiant Thor. What's the story? Where's he right now? Just didn't even was very kind of rude. And Dr. Frank says, would you like to come in? He comes in, he goes, oh yeah. So he comes in and he says to her, and he says, well, where is Valiant Thor right now? He says, I don't know. He goes, how do you get a hold of him? He goes, well, what you can do is you can write a letter, and Valiant Thor will come and pick it up, and he will respond, and you give me a way, I'll either contact you or whatever. So, because I don't have time to write a letter, and he goes, Dr. Frank goes, well, you can leave then. He goes, okay, I'll write a letter. So he went down, he wrote a letter to Valiant Thor, and in the letter, I guess he had sealed it, but Valiant Thor materialized at Dr. Frank's, and then he held it to his head, and he just knows what's in it. And later, Dr. Frank got the report afterward, what he had written, and he wanted to know who killed his brother and what the story was and all that. So this is part of the inner circle meeting when Dr. Frank would go on board. For many years, he would go on board for 3 days and have these wonderful experiences. They took him around the globe. He went with Don to Jimmy Carter's inside the White House, and Jimmy Carter walked up and he goes, "You two look like interesting folks." And he looked up on his shoulder here and he goes, "Where are you guys from?" He goes, "Oh, State Department, huh?" So he was at some meeting. So they have this ability to project image, kind of like a Jedi mind trick. So Valiant Thor told him that he did go meet Bobby Kennedy at probably right before his speech. He went into his room and knocked on his room door, and he invited him in. And Bobby Kennedy said he was pretty paranoid. He turned the TV on in the living room, and he took him into the shower, and he had a little radio. He played that on a little lower, and he ran the water because he knew they could listen and stuff. And he talked to Valiant Thor, and Valiant Thor said, "There are forces aligned against you. You probably shouldn't run this time, but if you run in 4 years, you'll be successful." And Bobby was already deeply in it. And Dr. Frank told me also that the bullet that killed him was from a sheriff officer who was part of his security detachment. The actual bullet was not from Sirhan Bisra Sirhan. So maybe Rosie Greer deflected it or something. Sirhan, of course, had a mind control. There's a crystal in his ship. The picture was shown on the Inquirer of the front page there. So Sirhan was absolutely MK Ultra mind control guy. So now, was it an accident? I don't know. I mean, I heard there was a girl with an umbrella, polka dot dress, and there's some other stories around there. It doesn't matter, but they probably found out it was the sheriff and kept it undercover, which makes me think that it was the real hit, not the patsy like Oswald. It was somewhere else. So I'll tell you one more story about Dr. Frank, because he was attacked frequently in the early days, especially. He was attacked by James McDonald, a major mucky muck in the aeronautic weather thing. And he said, "Dr. Frank Stranges is a fraud, and blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing, and there's no science, and there's nothing. The Venusian story is absolute rubbish," and so forth and so on. Now, I've shown you before, maybe people don't know this, but I was very close with Wendell Stevens, who wrote many books on extraterrestrials. I was getting Billy Meyer's contact notes at the age of 17, mailed to Fred Bell, and I'd read these mimeograph papers. And I talked to Wendell. I took him to Egypt in 1991. He was one of the presenters there, and I got to sit between him and Howard Menger, or Valiant Thor, on the plane. I was jumping back and forth and on this trip from JFK to Egypt. So they didn't get a minute's sleep with me peppering them with questions. So I talked to Wendell, and he told me that he was part of the early warning jets that would be scrambled in the 60s to chase UFOs. That's how he knew and was very much involved in extraterrestrials, and what led him to Billy Meyer and the incredible photographic evidence and researching and writing the famous book, UFO Contact from the Pleiades, which introduced the world to the Pleiadians. Now, in those notes, Billy Myers said that Semyasi said, I don't have any other contacts except for spurious scientific contacts. He may have forgotten that because Billy Meyer denied that Fred Bell had a contact. Semyasi said, I don't know about Dr. Frank Strange's. And obviously, Wendell Stevens told me that they thought, me thinkest thou think too much to Billy Meyer. So to get back to the story of Dr. Frank Strange's and the way it relates to Mr. McDonald was Wendell Stevens was listening to him, and he was talking about UFOs and how it's all weather phenomenon or balloons and nonsense. And a bunch of the pilots that were required to take his course on weather were snickering in the back. And he goes, and so he went to the back after the words, what are you guys laughing about? What are you guys talking? You're supposed to be paying attention. They said, you're wrong about the extraterrestrial spaceships. We chase them. So they gave him a schooling, and McDonald, and you can look this up, folks. McDonald went to, they don't talk about it, but he went to a meeting. I think it was Johnson was the president at the time, and at a big dinner with the president there, and McDonald stood up at the back and goes, I'm talking to some guys that are pilots in front of a big kind of dinner room. And he says, what's this going on with UFOs? We understand they're real, and I want to get to the bottom of this. He was kind of like Dr. Frank once he got enlightened to the truth, hearing it from pilots, not from a religious preacher, which caused him to discount it completely. And shortly after that, he, maybe even in the hospital room, he committed suicide like this, but he was lobotomized. So he's in the hospital in a coma, and somehow he got out of his bed, made it into the desert. Maybe it happened to Tucson when he got home. I think that's where he's from. And he shot himself this way. So that was a hit because he embarrassed and talked about the UFOs. So Dr. Frank Strange's, and I'm sure James McDonald would have apologized to him. There's another story that they were lambasting Dr. Frank Strange's and claiming that he was a drug dealer and using those in the newspaper caused a lot of problems. But Dr. Frank Strange's was set up as a patsy by a guy that said, come to Mexico, and offered him a free trip and wanted to support him. And they got arrested on the way back. The guy put in some marijuana in the back, and Dr. Frank Strange's had no clue whatsoever. It's in the 70s. And he ended up getting sentenced to go into jail for like 8 months or something, even though he was an unwitting participant. He was a pastor with the police department. He had a whole host of other service and Christian related stuff, but they sentenced him. But guess what? It turned into a blessing, Alfred. And he was in the exercise yard, and in walks Valiant Thor in a full suit, walking through a gate with a clone of him, his exact duplicate, walking in, and Valiant Thor, they walked right out through security, just like he walked through the Pentagon, and he went aboard a starship that hovers above the earth, and he got to live there for like 3 or 4 months on board the starship. So that blessing and that ridicule and that situation turned into a blessing for him. And so there's a lot of amazing stories. And that's the one I'm going to reveal in my chapter of the book that will be out about Dr. Frank Strange's. But I can promise you, he was a preacher. And at one of the last meetings I went to, he said, Valiant Thor came into my room last night. He said, Dr. Frank, don't preach so much. Now Dr. Frank, Valiant Thor spoke very highly of Christ, and he spoke very highly of Dr. Frank Strange's as well to other contactees. So what Dr. Frank said, he says, and in the meeting he said, praise the Lord, hallelujah. And after I said, he said, tell me not to preach. He goes, but praise the Lord, hallelujah. So Dr. Frank was very much a spiritual teacher. So if you think that Christ is the Lucifer, you can do that. Now, the Freemasons, not every Freemason is a a cabal related pedophile. In fact, the Freemasons were part of the Venusian contingent long ago, when the Freemasons and the Illuminati truly was the spiritual um, hidden hand working in the governments of the world to bring about changes. Now, just like the birth of Jesus, he didn't create a church, but right after he died, they couldn't stop the onslaught of faithful believers who had witnessed him raising people from the dead, and all the stories of healing, the thousands of people who had met people who know that guy's crippled, now he's walking healthy. It was spreading like wildfire, the teachings of Christ, the message of brotherhood and forgiveness, hope, and that you don't need religious authorities to interpret for you, that you have Christ within you as your divine essence. So that was Christ's message. It was in opposition to the authorities, and he was hung on the cross for it. So they take that and they turned it into a church with Constantine, and they put the priest in and interpreters of what God's law and rules are, instead of what Christ taught, that the reflection of Christ is within you. So in the same way, um, they have um, taken the the church and Christ's teachings and it's turned in the same way the Freemasons were recognized by the control network or the dark force or the cabal or the greedy black sun group that's under the control of the hybrid interlopers to this planet, that it took over this planet long ago, and turned that into their dark agenda. So that's being unwound now. So let's make clear, Christ, uh, uh, Dr. Frank Strange's was a Bible thumping thing. I asked about him. They said he is now ascended to the seventh dimension, and he teaches on board Valiant Thor's uh, uh, ship.
Wonderful. I'm so glad that you're able to clarify that, Robert. And now I would like to ask you this, because it's a question that kept on coming up, both in terms of the information that the Venusian hierarchy of light were able to share with your conference.
Mhm.
Could you share with our listeners a bit about what the Venusian connection to Jesus is, to Jesus, to Christ?
Okay.
And
So, so this is difficult for people to wrap the right mind around it, but the Venusians, uh, Jesus identified with Venus. He said, "I am the bright and early morning star." Okay, so that's what he was. He was from Venus. Now, previously, it said Lucifer was a morning star, and that's when there was a very large planet, bigger than Jupiter, that exploded. That's another story. I won't go into that. Venus was a moon of that and changed its orbit and became in its position now. That large planet is what we now know as the asteroid belt, the Kuiper belt, and the smaller particles are now what we know as the Oort cloud. So there's a lot of history of the planet that I'm learning, of the solar system and various aspects of the true history of the Earth and the extraterrestrial influence. So from my understanding, and this is all over my website, and you can read this in the Gospel of Thomas, Dr. Frank Strange's was given a technology called the Urim and the Thummim, or the seer and the interpreter, and he was given a breastplate that was worn by Aaron with the Ark of the Covenant. This was the way that the communication to guide mankind surreptitiously, like Wizard of Oz, behind the scenes, to correct and alter the course and to put at bay the interlopers and the dark demons that had taken control of this planet at the time of the fall. And they had to allow that to occur because there were certain galactic laws that these interlopers could literally, if they violated the higher dimensional agreements, um, of councils and stuff, and rules that they had made for interaction with the third dimension. Those beings could and would blow up worlds, and they still have that ability to a certain extent, although that's being curtailed now, as many people are reporting as the various things. So as the various contactees are reporting on different reports, and I can confirm some of those reports from the information that I know. So I will just say that it's important that people understand that history, and that the dark and the light battle in the higher dimensions. So the reptilians lived tens of thousands of years. So when they were cast down into the earth, they kind of took over and they made an agreement with the human population at that time, and to stop a war that was going on, was very violent, very nasty war. But they said, if we take over, we're going to own and control your world. And the humans agreed and said, okay, do it. So they had permission to do that, but they instilled a parasitic control. They actually hated mankind, and they hate God, because mankind is slated to become a very highly developed. The souls from here can surpass even some of these beings in the higher dimensions. So that's the story of the Dr. Frank Strange. And a lot of this is evidenced in Dr. Keller's book in regards to the Bible and the casting down of the demons and stuff. So to understand who Christ is, according to the Venusians actually come from a planet called Tau Ceti, and they're called the Norcans. And Corey Good actually mentioned that in his time when he was taken there briefly. He was in a valley, and he said he saw some ants or some insects. Those were actually bees that were observing him and reading his thoughts as to what had transpired when the Mayan group, what he called the Oompa Loompas, Corey did, that had called Corey up to distract a demon that had killed some of their people. They had him in a room, and he was kind of in a place, but he was confined. And so Corey came in, and the being was distracted, and they were able to kill him. So a lot of these things are corresponding to the knowledge that I know from a lot of the things. So there's things happening. So what the Venusians said, and I said, I questioned them. I said, how can God be the creator, be in one form, right? And yet within all other forms. So I got this clarity, and it makes sense to me. So the Venusians came from Tau Ceti. Their planet was losing its atmosphere, and they sent some spaceships here. They saw that they could live here, this environment. That was 25 million years ago. So they crash landed on Mars, and I think a couple made it on Venus. One maybe went passed by. I don't know the story. I think they sent 4 super huge ships to Venus, and the native population was the bees, and they made an agreement that they were a sentient species, and the women are more telepathic amongst the Venusians. They put their left hand on the head of the bee, and they got permission. So they were living on Venus. Now, there was and I don't know if he was an ascended master on Venus or on Tau Ceti, but within the Venusian, as we know them now, the Norcans, officially from their ancient history, would be called, 4 brothers were born, and they became ascended masters. And this is the being that is known and talked about in the Theosophical, in the teachings of Madame Blavatsky, of Sunat Kumara. Sunat Kumara is a very high level ascended master who's been ascended for many millions of years. As an ascended master, he would go and appear to lower dimensional worlds, 4th, 5th, 6th, 3rd, and teach the teachings of love and God. So he had many lifetimes, many lifetimes, and he was part and parcel saving the earth after a cataclysm that took place to maintain the light and hold the energy here. And so he was chosen by what we call a creator's son. And this is in the Urantia book. So the creator's son, there are many of them, and they create galaxies. They are what is called the logos of a galaxy. As above, so below. So the logos of a galaxy creates all the planets and all the life within the entire galaxy. Okay. Now, there's billions of them. With James Webb, we're just seeing galaxies without end. The physicists are getting schooled that they don't have a clue what's going on out there, what their thoughts are, right? So that creator's son must incarnate within his own incarnation, within his own creation. And on the low physical plane, he had chosen the earth to incarnate on. So as the author of all things, he knew that this earth would be important, and that's what's taking place right now. Actually, a reversal of the dark fall when Christ came here 2,000 years ago, and he had to come early to when Satan, he was up in the mountain, and I'm going to explain the dark hierarchy. He said, I own the world. He said, what are you doing here? You got some powers. Worship me. I own the world. I'll give you anything. And Christ said, no. Get thee behind me, Satan. So that literally was the judgment that we're seeing taking place now as the earth is rectifying this imbalance of the free will of higher dimensions. Everyone goes, I want to go to the fifth dimension. I want to go to the fifth dimension. The moon is in the seventh house, you know? So, but reality, we look at these higher beings that were cast down. Lucifer and some of these legions of angels were cast down from the eighth or ninth or who knows what dimension and cast down. They're cast down into the fifth and sixth dimension. They're still beyond us. But in the universe where everything was pretty much very positive, there was some changes in the administration. This is detailed in the Urantia book on the planet called Havona, or the Sea of Glass. I don't want to go too much into that, but basically there was a rebellion, and it caused many worlds to fall. And we're now in the final stages of the cleaning up of that on the material levels. But those beings were taking advantage of agreements where the higher dimensionals were to nurture and to uplift and to guide the lower third dimensional realms of matter that would evolve into a species, and the Elohim and Seraphim would augment and seed the planet and help with the genetic development of different species, because these higher dimensionals actually can grow by lowering their vibration and incarnating in the earthly vehicle. Why? Because this is where the rubber meets the road. The material planes are the vanguard of spirit. So some of these souls that were stuck in the sixth dimension, not able to ascend, it was ordained that this earth would be a way for those beings to surpass even those beings. So that's the story kind of Satan. So Christ came here to judge them. So when we talk about the infinite Father, the full creator of everything, you can't talk about it because it's beyond all name and form, transcendent to all name and form, immanent within all name and form, and yet beyond all name and form. We're a drop of the ocean. And you're part and parcel of everything through the web of life, not only in this universe, but all others, in all time and space, in all dimensions. And we look out, we see billions of galaxies. There's multi-dimensional worlds that we can't even fathom. So that infinite, pure, creative intelligence that I would define as the isness, Alex Collier and I agree on that, and or you could call it the unknowable, the knower, knowing the known and the unknown. I mean, it doesn't, you can't wrap your mind around. So this pure creative force has created in the material realms, or in the, at least in the higher dimensions of what we understand, a creator son to create a galaxy. So as he reflects, as the Archangel Michael, not all archons are bad, as many people think. J.J. Hurtak makes that abundantly clear. There's some positive archons and the fallen archons. Archons, according to Venusians, are manipulators of matter, ascended masters or dimensional beings that have the ability to understand thought and the process of creation and use God's creative force to manifest. And we have those powers too, abundantly, but we're misled in our development to understanding that. So to go into God here, God is unknowable. The reflection of God we could see is the creator's sons. And then the reflection of the creator's son on earth became at the lower physical plane, became the ascended master, Jesus Christ, was to hold this being for 3 years, 3.5 years. That was the time. At that point in time, he became what the Venusians call the living word of God made flesh. And they said, as such, he's worthy of worship. So I still was having problem with that. So he was kind of like a fractal of God, but so are we all. But he knew it, and he was the first one to attain that. I asked about the other extraterrestrial groups. I said, do they recognize that? And he says, yes, many do. He's established various regions on various worlds in the lower dimensional worlds. I said, what about the Pleiades? They said the Pleiades is very materialistic. Most of them in the Lyran system and around there are on what is called the fifth ray of concrete science and knowledge. They're very materialistic. They're some of the most advanced technological races on the fourth and dimension within the galaxy, that's for sure. But they said they see him as a great teacher. They said, the Queen said, sadly, they see him as a great teacher only. And all this is available on my website that you can
Right.
look at. So I'm sorry I've been really long-winded on these
No,
two.
no. You get, and I want to just read you this, which is directly connected. It's from your website, the promise revealed. You say, Valiant Thor is the leader of the Solar Council's mission to Earth. He was directly commissioned by Sananda Yehoshua, the Christ, to oversee the planetary redemption plans to liberate Earth and to make the people of Earth aware that we are not alone in the universe. Valiant Thor has also spoken to the United Nations on several occasions. He has worked with the governments of the world to offer them interplanetary culture exchange, which would allow the Earth to advance in terms of technology. So the mission of Valiant Thor did not end with Eisenhower. He's still active. Is that, and he's sort of, this is part of the current dynamics of Venus with Earth, with the exopolitics of Earth. Is that what is occurring now? And this is with Sananda the Christ as appointing all of this. Is that what the case is?
I do believe that that is the case, and that the Venusians have been our guardian sister planet for a long, long time. And especially with the interlopers here, they've been reporting. The Pleiadians have also been very, very involved, the Syrians and many other races within the Galactic Confederation of Light. The Pleiadians are not part of our confederation. We have 601 worlds and 51 systems. However, the Earth is getting a lot of attention now because this is one of the last strongholds of the Luciferian Satanist force that was cast down. So we're having a lot of attention here right now. And he was appointed by Christ. And a little side story here real quick. Back in the Grecian times, there was a Saurian invasion, and the Venusians, as guardians, came and did battle with a fleet of Saurians that were invading the Earth to take over. And the queen ship, she was a Victoria. Her name was Queen Victoria, formerly from Earth. Most Venusians are from Earth and translate or ascend to the next chain of evolution in the higher dimensions to Venus. And she crash landed on Mount Olympus. So here you have all the stories of by Jove and Jupiter and Zeus and Hercules and all these things. And the Grecian generals made statues of her and were sacrificing animals to be victorious in war, because the Venusians don't interfere with the human populace. Since Atlantean times, it was decided, leave them alone. We have to develop on our own because we worship them. Um, the extraterrestrials here would set themselves up as gods to be worshipped. We'd become envious of their technology. We'd resent them. So all contact and the other groups have to agree to this, because it's decided by our local system that and that the higher dimensionals and other beings are not to interfere with us on Earth. They can work behind the scenes secretly, just as the dark guys are not allowed, reptilians aren't allowed to come on the surface and walk amongst us. It's all done Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. And this is what's coming now, as a revelation to change all that. So definitely, Valiant Thor is installed. He's in charge of entire fleets of ships. Not only do they have physical ships that are physically sitting there, sometimes cloaked, but there are two ships in the higher dimensional plane, the fifth dimension, guarding. So the reaction time is more immediate and quick. If anything takes place, there is defense. And it's a very exotic and powerful guardianship. They years ago they placed radio beacons on every planet, on the moon, on Mars, on Jupiter. There's these giant radio towers, so that no matter where the planets are, they have instantaneous radio communication throughout the solar system for those that don't have the telepathic abilities of the Venusians, like Alon, the 24-year-old security chief that I've met.
Yeah, now you held an extraordinary conference, and you're holding next April 7th to 14th a cruise, a hidden secrets cruise from Los Angeles down to Mexico, which will have all of the links to, and so we certainly want to talk about that now.
Okay.
Yeah, but before we do that, I wanted to ask you this question to see whether it was appropriate. I know that one of the events that occurred at your conference, which I was fortunate enough to present a PowerPoint at, and I feel very privileged to have done that, was that Valiant Thor himself delivered a verbal statement, which is very, very unusual.
Recorded message.
Recorded message,
I
right?
wasn't allowed to release it. I can't do it anymore. I can share it privately.
Yeah.
Can't play it publicly.
Yeah. I wondered, is the transcript of that recorded message publicly shareable?
Yes, and let me show you right where that is. I'm going to share that real quick here.
Yeah, is that something that you can read for us now, or?
Yeah, I absolutely can do that.
Could you do that?
I have it pulled up for us right here. I'm going to pull it up for you.
Oh, good.
So you can actually read the message of Valiant Thor. It's quite it's good. It's kind of it's a typical message from Valiant Thor that Dr. Frank Strange is used to read. They're very not want to get involved in politics or economics with us. They do work clandestinely behind the scenes, but people are too triggered. There's too many egos, and they're not going to start making statements or telling stuff. But I'm going to read the actual message from Valiant Thor here. And this is on my website, thepromiserevealed.net, under truth reference. I have a various levels of blogs here that you can check out. So this is about 4 back. There's my conference there. There's I'd say about a third of the people of the conference actually made it to the picture. Everyone's busy doing stuff. But I'm going to read the actual message from Valiant Thor. There's some questions and answers that we'll probably get into in the next meeting. There's a council meeting on a spaceship called the Leviathan, which is above the cloaked moon of Neith on Venus. There's Valiant Thor. So I'm going to read to you, and his voice is kind of, it goes, it's an exact transcript of the voice recorded message that was played for those in attendance in the Mount Shasta Summer Conference. It reflects the same style of information given to Dr. Frank Stranges that he shared on the Inner Circle meetings throughout his time serving on the Council of 12 for many years. Communique from Victor Fleet Commander Valiant Thor to the elect pilgrim souls on the Earth's material plane. Queen Orda, the hierarchy of light, and the Venus Angel Force extend their most gracious greetings to all assembled at the Look to Venus Morning Star Revelations Conference, now being held on the slopes of beautiful Mount Shasta in Northern California this July 9th, 2022. Somehow they knew I was going to read it on the 9th. So, your NASA and other space agencies of the Earth have identified my ship as a legendary Black Knight. It's saucer-shaped and approximately 300 feet in diameter. Our longitudinal flight path has shifted a few hundred miles to the west and has now taken us over your location in Northern California. We are moving from a southern to northern direction at this time, soon to pass over your North Pole. At such times, our passing overhead in the nighttime hours, you are invited aboard Victor 1 to attend night classes. You will lose track of time as is measured on Earth while you are attending such classes on Victor 1. You will find it a very rich experience, not soon to be forgotten. Despite your presence aboard this ship in your astral body, everything will seem quite solid and substantial. As pursuit and acquisition of happiness by the elect ones of Earth is a designated mission of the Venusian Angel Force. You will discover that all you could possibly hope for on board Victor 1 or any other Venusian spacecraft. You also meet many of the exalted beings of the Venusian Angel Force who work with me in carrying out my missions of enlightenment and peace throughout this quadrant of the Milky Way galaxy. They have all general human appearances, but there are some differences. And I said, Angel Force refers to Venusians living and walking amongst the surface and people of the earth, quietly influencing people toward peaceful relations and leading many people toward the truth in all of their endeavors, including scientists, musicians, military, and financial influencers, to name a few. That includes starseeds from Venus, such as myself and Raymond. Do not be afraid when you encounter my splendid and longtime friend and associate, Io. He comes from a distant solar system with nearly 100 inhabited worlds orbiting a central sun. As there are so many worlds, each one has simply been designated by a number. Io is spelled Y-O, but pronounced as Y-E-O-H. Is about 6 feet 2 inches in height and weighs some 190 pounds. He has reddish complexion like the Native Americans of your world and has only one eye. The eye spans the same distance that exists across your face as two eyes. He looks rather scary at first, cyclopean. He has the ability to move his eye back and forth from side to side of his face to the other so that nothing escapes his rapt attention. His attention rivals that of the most astute scientists of Earth. He has in his being emanations of light. Io looks forward to meeting you soon when you take your place as one of the students in one of the night classes. I, Valiant Thor, and now from the planet you call Venus, but which we refer to as Abahar. That means planet of the bees. Along with me and instructing the night classes is another Venusian, Teal. That's his vice commander. She's about 5 inches in height and weighs about 180 pounds. She's immediately recognizable by her bright green eyes and flaming red hair. She's musically talented in vocals and instruments and usually opens all assembly meetings with an enchanting song. Another female instructor you are likely to meet is Barian Leal from a large moon of Jupiter that I'm not permitted to identify for you at this time for security reasons. She's about the same height as Teal, but weighs only about 125 pounds. What makes her stand out is her light blue skin color. She also has sharp blue eyes and bright blue hair. Shoulder length, this is common for most inhabitants of lunar colonies, no matter what their parent world might be. Her area of expertise is diplomacy, getting people to talk with one another, uh, find common ground, and provide spiritual enhancement to life for all peoples. Our space navigator, engineer Helia Darina, is considered the most advanced scientist in our space quadrant. He will acquaint you with some of the more advanced technology aboard Victor 1 and provide information as to the 601 planetary systems of the Galactic Confederation of Light within 51 solar systems. Uh, my Vice Commander Don Thawne, the resurrected Dr. Frank E. Strange's communications officer Jill, and many others of the Victor 1 spacecraft fleet frequently sit in on the classes, observers, and seconds in the event an instructor is called away. From time to time, Unaya, one of 6 ascended masters that makes visits to Victor 1, will make a more frequent appearance. Unai has been guiding the Earth from behind the scenes since the beginning of life on your planet. He hails from the Gold Star planet at the fringe of your knowable universe. This is all I can say about these personnel and classes at this time. Stay strong in the power of the blue flame and the agape love of the universal creator and his holy angels. Your adventure is soon to begin. We of Victor 1 believe that you have constituted one of the most important groups on the face of the earth today. Do not fail to take every opportunity to be kind to your brothers and sisters of your world. Let the light of the morning star rise in your hearts, thus filling your hearts with love for all. I want you to know that I love you all and wish you the happiest and most illuminating Venus conference. May God bless and prosper the United States of America and protect her in the prophesied perilous days ahead. Robert Potter, an association of Dr. Frank Stranges and a member of the original Inner Circle, will now light a candle and invoke the Ring of Fire prayers for divine protection for you all in carrying out this mighty work initiated by Dr. Frank Stranges in the 1940s. That's that part of the talk.
Wow, wow. And so he actually brought a special blessing for the United States of America. So does the United States of America have a special spiritual identity in the larger scheme of things on planet Earth, as opposed to other nations, would you say?
I think it's one of the major, of course, the major powers. They're all part of the Black Sun, but the America has been the military arm, and so there's been a tremendous amount of control and manipulation that puts us probably as one, two. I would say put us. You got Korea is probably number one, and mind control and suppression of truth. China's probably right in there.
Yeah.
And but China's so big that people get away. I mean, America, England, and Germany are some of the most controlled, manipulated, and ignorant.
Right. So, but I mean,
people.
What I was getting at,
not capable. We've created really. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we seem to have gone into some territory that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Good.
Yeah. This is my question.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, good. My question is this, not so much what the dark parts of these nations like the US, Britain, Germany, China, and Russia are doing, but in the original conception of the constitutional USA, does that have a special spiritual identity, or is that mythology, in your opinion?
That was, you hit a very good point there, because the Ascended Master Saint Germain, an Ascended Master, one of the elder brothers who've been guiding the divine plan on earth to see to it, nothing's going to stop the divine plan and the great work of the redemption of planet Earth and the ushering in of the new earth and the new age and the ascension of the peoples of earth. That's already done deal. There's tremendous actions being taken place by ground command, and I'm going to say it pisses a lot of people off, but her name's Kimberly Ann Gogan, and with what's going on right now, the reports of taking place are everyone's gonna know her name very soon. But the Earth is very important in that. The Venusians actually have been very instrumental in many worlds behind the scenes. They have representatives of all nations in all countries, and they monitor very closely every thought, word, and deed of many of the world's elite cabal, royal elite families that have tried to control and harvest human energy and to destroy this world in the name of Satan. And they're still attempting it at the highest levels of those that are left. Many of these foreign interlopers have been removed and had their souls reset, or they choose to suicide their soul based on the recognition of the karma as they're brought before the great judge of themselves in the revelation of the higher dimensional courts. So I'm going to say that an important part is the Venusian's influence. See, America was one of the last countries to bring so many different cultures here. This was the land of the free. It was virgin ground. Unfortunately, we didn't do it respectfully, and we wiped out the Indians along the way. But working within the limitations of the dark influences and the human condition, the Venusians did seek to influence our founding fathers. And for those of you who follow my work, I have met the commander of the moon base. Her name is Commander Aura Range. She's well documented as being a contactee of many other contactees of meeting her, Truman Bethron, and notably Daniel Fry, who wrote the White Sand Incidents, knew her, as well as he knew Alon, the security chief that I met as well. So that's who sent Daniel Fry the spaceship and gave him a ride to New York and back in the 50s. So the commander of the moon base, Aura Rains, spoke to me that she had met Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, I'm sure many others. These were ones that I asked because Thomas Paine wrote The Rights of Man. Benjamin Franklin was actually head of the Masonic Lodge. Back then it was called the Resistance because they met in secret. And he did what's called the Boston Tea Party, kind of a blank U to the British and their control network and their stealing of harvesting of human energy and power. Money represents your energy and is a power, and that's one of the main control networks of the bad guys. So I said, did you help him with electricity? And she coyly answered, I may have led him into certain avenues of research that may have led him to that. And then I said, I know that Thomas Jefferson would be sitting in his room coming back from a long ride, and he'd open up his locked study and she would be sitting there on his divan or whatever, and she had papers for him to educate him. I've also been present where contactees gather and are given information to meet extraterrestrials and physically exchange contacts. That's from other stuff, and that's I can't really talk too much about that. That was years ago, but there's definitely a hands-on approach for initiates and for those who can keep their mouth closed to certain aspects, but to properly deliver messages without ego or thoughts of monetary aggrandizement or something like that. So I got to be careful. I'm just a postman. I'm not to be concerned with how to react. So
right. Well, listen, thank you for all of that. Now, you were going to tell us about a very special Hidden Secrets cruise that is planned for April 7th to 14th, 2023. And we're going to put the links to that in the program description to this program, because that'll be sort of the follow-up to this conference.
Right.
And, yeah.
I do appreciate that, Alfred. And I'm going to just share the screen here real quick. So this is the homepage of my website here. Oops, I got to go back. I have these sliders here, but this one right here, I am not putting it on. I'm a speaker. So
I see.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
I would like to say, if you do go here,
that.
if you sign up under me, I offering 3 different workshops, and you get a free one of my healing sessions. I've been a massage therapist for many, many years, and so I'm offering a couple things. So you can share your significant other by learning about the cruise here. And when you sign up, you're actually required to say where you got your information. But if you do mine, you get there. Now, so all the information's here. There's no um, there's no vaccines or masks or tests required whatsoever for this trip. So you're free to go. We're going to go down to Cabo San Lucas. We're going to be going to Puerto Vallarta and Mazatlan. I guess I should share a little bit more here. I just want to share. We have some other great speakers. Brad Olson's going to be there. Jimmy Church, Nick Pope, Laura Eisenhower, Maureen St. Germain, Suzanne Shumsky, she's heading it up, Dr. Suzanne, Paula Harris, and others are going to be here at this conference speaking on the tour. Now, they actually have a incredible discount if you have 2 people. And for anybody who wants to go, contact me. I'm putting people together. There's a woman right now who wants to sign up at the same time. I think you save $250. It includes all food, and it's basically, I think it's $1,200 or $11.99 or something like that. So and I think it becomes, I forget what it is. I don't even know the price. I actually didn't look, but
Right.
it's included. It might be more. I should look, but we go down and we're going to Cabo San Lucas. I know they've had a hurricane, but that's just kind of like a go and enjoy the nature, do a jet ski, take a sail, get some sun, buy a lobster, get some stuff. And then we're going to go to Puerto Vallarta, and we're going to have a day excursion there, and we're going to go to Mazatlan. So you get a nice stateroom, food, and all the enjoyment of the boat, and with all the things they have. I've never been on a cruise, so I'm kind of excited. Looking
Oh,
forward to it.
good.
So that's a fun trip.
Yeah. Now this is part 1 of a 3-part series, and we'll be doing the part 2 of the 3-part series next Monday, September 19th. And so we'll be looking forward to that. And I just want to give an advance. We'll be talking about Earth changes, a hydrogen cloud, a parallel Earth, number 4. But we'll be talking about the breakthrough, which is a new society and global restoration plan. So there's a lot coming up, and you're our guide through that. And so thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I want to say thank you very much for having me on. Also, for those of you who are interested, you can join my inner circle. And right now I've had some financial setbacks. I had a computer blow up, a car explode, and I'm offering some incredible discounts on some of my more expensive items. In fact, you're going to get them for about cost or less even. That's just materials on some of my products. So if you join up, you get a newsletter, and you're going to get direct offers from the newsletter, and it would help me out. I really would appreciate it. I do have donations. Some people give them, but it's not really. I like to just offer discounts and stuff. So anybody who's interested in this information and would like to help out, or interested in some of my wonderful products, the pyramids that I sell and the pyramid systems, these jewelry designs are like this one's normally running at about $1,000 solid silver, and I'm offering that for like $800 or $799 or $850 right now. Basically, I just need to recoup the money for the ones I've made to move on to the to the next step to take care of rent and stuff. But
Sure.
thank you so much, Alfred. I appreciate you letting me share this.
Oh yeah, totally. And we'll put all of those links in the program description. And we appreciate very much the sort of the in-depth introduction that I have learned a tremendous amount today, and I think I now grok at a deeper level the relationships between the local creator sun, Venus, Earth, Valiant Thor, all of that. So thank you so much. Again, could you give your website?
Yeah, it's the promiserevealed.net, HTTPS, whatever those / will take you there. You can Google my name, Rob Potter or Robert Potter. And it's been an honor. And I look forward to when you can travel and get here soon, because we need to have you at my conference. I know the restrictions are off. Are you still banned from coming to the USA?
No, I'm not really. I was there. I haven't been in an airplane for over a decade, and there were some close allies of mine and readers that sent me dreams that they had that said that they saw in newspapers that said, oh, the great peace supporter of peace, Alfred Weber, his plane went down and he was killed. And this was at the height of my traveling around the world to attend conferences. And so I'm a great believer in precognition. And so at that point, I just went, I'm just letting go of the need to travel physically, and I'm just going to do it virtually. But I'm sharing with you openly.
You can always take a road trip. It's not that far.
That's right. I said to myself, yeah, I said, we can always go via car. And so that is why I have not been traveling. So perhaps you will see me down there. Let's
work on next year.
Yeah,
I'll take care of your room and board and all that gas money. Okay.
Okay.
I'm serious. Let's bring.
I know I've got to consult my brilliant other half, Dr. Jerry DeStefano Weber, who actually drives our family automobile, but we'll see.
There you go. Let's get you down here.
Okay, good enough then. Well, listen, thank you very much, and we look forward to Monday when we'll go to part 2 of this awesome series. Thank you so much.
All right, God bless you. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. God bless.